Hi, it's Dave Scott for the Thunder and the Valley Triathlon coming up in the end of May, and I've got 4 questions from Terry, Tom, Jim, and Paul. And Terry, you had a question about the paleo diet. I think the paleo diet is a great dietary choice. A lot of people have difficulty in transitioning from whatever their diet is to taking in the paleo diet. And there are some advantages. One, you're cutting out grains, and grains have a symptomatic effect similar to high fructose drinks, and that includes any kind of vitamin water, fruit drinks from orange juice to apple juice to cranberry juice. A lot of it's digested through your liver, and the ultimate consequence of taking in too many carbohydrates is this type of carbohydrate, and certainly in the simple form, is that it can lay down visceral fat around your organs. So I like the fact that the paleo diet eliminates the grains. One of the difficulties on the paleo diet is maybe getting enough of the vegetables. And if you think of the leafy green vegetables or cruciferous vegetables, make sure you add those to your diet, and make sure that you get in a substantial amount of healthy fats. And when I talk about healthy fats, I've become an avid eater of avocados. I actually had 2.5 avocados last night, which is kind of excessive. Also, nuts, and there's a lot of great nuts: almonds, walnuts, macadamia nuts, pecans, cashews are good as well. I like to put a little baggie, have a little nut bag that I'm taking to my office, which I'm at right now, and you can munch on those. And I'll just say one last thing with any diet that you have: make sure that you have about a 2 to 2.5 hour window where you do not eat. There are 2 key hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and those are the sensory hormones from your stomach to your brain that really cue when you're hungry or when you're full. And regardless if you're on a paleo diet or you're eating a massive amount of carbohydrates, you still have to have this window. So you're on the right track. Stick with the paleo diet. I had a question from Tom, and he has an old bike, and he wanted to know whether or not you should upgrade to a tri-bike. The advantage of the tri-bike is what you see with all those triathletes out there. You're in a really supreme aerodynamic position. Your front end is down a little bit lower. As long as you're positioned right on that, you should be able to fire your glutes. The one difficulty is that it can put a little more stress on your cervical spine, which a lot of people feel, and also your trapezius. And this kind of segues me into Jim's question. You said you'd got an aggressive bike. You were the last place finisher in the Thunder and the Valley race, and you better do better this year, darn it, Jim. Let's get going. Is it too aggressive? So both of you, Tom and Jim, on your bikes, when you get set up, you're really going to find an optimal position over time. In other words, if the front end is too low and that causes more stress all the way through your spinal muscles, obviously you're going to be ending up sitting up on your bike and putting your hands on your bars. So it sort of defeats the purpose of the aero bar. Also, you may want to look at the crank arm length. If the crank arm length is too long based on your height, sometimes going to a shorter turning radius puts less stress on your lower back as well. So take a look at the crank length. Again, depending on your size, you may want to go down to 167.5 or even 165, and that'll elevate your spin rate as well. I'm just looking at my notes here because there was a couple things that you had said, and Jim, I know you had mentioned about this aggressive bike. I think, again, on the aggressive side, not to reiterate too much, but you can also just bring that front end forward as long as you don't minimize your glutes, and that will take the stress off your back as well. And usually the back is the key trigger on why we have to sit back up like a tourist. So I hopefully that helped. And Tom, you said you had a 13-year-old bike. You're about ready for an upgrade, so darn it, get one. Paul, you had a question on cold water swims, and on the cold water swims, I guess my first response is be more selective on your swims. But on a serious note, there are cold water swims. I've had many cold water swims, and how can we accommodate our bodies? Because we're all different. We all have a different genetic profile on how we adapt or we overcome the psychological part of cold water. So a few things. One, make sure that you don't get in the cold water before you start your race. Stay nice and warm. I always suggest to people that your extremities are extremely warm, so wear warm socks, shoes, wear gloves, and a hat. This may seem kind of silly, even if the temperature outside is fairly mild. Make sure you're kind of overly warm but not sweating. The second thing is make sure that you warm up before you go into the swim, whether it's big dynamic swing movements with your arms and your shoulders, your legs, or you actually go out on your bike so that you're warm, and or a run, which can elevate your core temperature. Races are in the morning. Generally, your core temperature is really low. So allow a longer, slower warm-up for that cold water swim. And really, that applies to all your races. Make sure that you are doing some warm-up before you go out. Okay, I think that covers it. I'll be back with you real soon.